So I'll do a couple of more polls just to kind of see where residents are on this issue. So I'm here to talk about the revitalization and economic development of Bluff, specifically to discuss a 1 cent sales and use tax that I've been talking about for some time. And the tax would be collected once passed for 10 years. And what I tried to do the other day was to answer questions based on a frequently asked questions sheet that we created. And we created this sheet based upon questions that I have received from people. People who support one and say, I know we need one. People who say, we don't need another one. We need to wait. We need to wait till after the forensic audit is done. So what I try to do is really address those questions. So I'm going to first start the way that I started yesterday by addressing the fact that really years ago, when there was an effort to come together and to hold meetings, to talk about what the city wanted, and then we learned of an effort that was later called Go Forward, and that initiative resulted in a recommended sales and use tax. I believe at that time we needed one. But when the plan folded out, I didn't feel like there was enough connection and partnership with UAPB. I didn't feel like there was enough transparency and accountability built into the ordinance, and particularly into the public-private partnership and creation of urban renewal. I didn't support it. And I was very direct in speaking with leadership around that plan. However, I also didn't attack it. When it came up for re-election in 2023, I didn't support it, but my message consistently was no, not now. I asked residents to vote no, not now, because I felt very strongly that we needed to do this right. And I have taken most of this year to outline what do this right looks like for Pine Bluff at this juncture. I wanted to share that because a lot of people have asked me, well, how could you propose a tax when you were against the tax? I wasn't against a tax. I was against how the previous tax was being implemented. And it wasn't even just specific to Go Forward. I think that there are certain things that we could learn from other taxes. Previous to that, we voted for the penny for progress under Mayor Rodriguez, and I supported that tax from afar. I wasn't that involved at that time, but I think the thing that we learned from that is while we want transparency, we want accountability, we want budgets, right? We want to know how are these things going to be spent, how much is everything going to cost. And for example, the Aquatic Center, which bears Mary's name, and rightfully so, it took a really long time to build because when we build the budget and the language so strictly that when it comes time to build, only that amount of money will be dedicated to that project. And we know right now, we have no idea how much eggs are going to be tomorrow, let alone how much a build out of a several thousand, $100,000, or multi-million-dollar project would be. And by the time you get ready to turn dirt, if you don't have all of the money necessary to pay, then what you have to do, what the city has to do in that case, is raise private dollars to ensure that all of the money will be here to complete the project. And that's what we have to do in the case of the Aquatic Center. And what we want to do, particularly with the priorities and the areas that we need to focus on the city of Pine Bluff, we want to make sure that those funds are available when it comes time to initiate and complete these projects, whether it be related to, and these are the priorities that I ran on, these are the priorities that we have worked on throughout my first year, almost my first year as mayor of the city of Pine Bluff. And that's youth investment, that is economic development with a specific focus on infrastructure and tourism and public safety, period. It does not in any way connect to those areas, we're not doing it. Now, I think that what is also important for people to know, for residents, citizens to know, is that we have spent almost a year. I am 10 months and 18 days in, and everything we've done has been rooted in two things. I'll say three things. My promises and agenda, priorities that I just spelled out, and many of you may be aware of the transition committees that we put together. So as we were transitioning from one administration to the next, we reached out to people in the community to be a part of that transition. And rather than engage and invest in, a big strategic plan, we knew that it was very critical for us to get our house in order, for us to make sure that we had the right leadership at the helm of every department, that our boards and commissions were fully appointed, which they still aren't yet, but my goal is for them to be by the end of the year. And so we pulled them together, those committees, with the assistance of city government leadership and personnel across the board, supported those committees, and they came out with very clear recommendations. One of the handouts that you'll receive tonight is headed Mayor's Pine Bluff Progress Report. And what that is, on the front and back, is a list from every committee of what their recommendations were. Highlighted in red are the recommendations that we have either done and completed, or that we are solidly working on as we speak. That is important for you to know, so that as we discuss the proposal of a new sales and use tax, I am asking you not just to listen to what I say, but look at what I do. Consider what the leadership of this city, what this administration has done, and know that we are resolute and committed to do what we say we're going to do. That doesn't mean we're perfect. That doesn't mean timelines don't get stretched. When things pop up, and trust me, in city government, things pop up. But we have worked every day from January 1st, and really prior to that, to do the things that we said we were going to do during the campaign. Since then, as we have built out our priorities and fleshed out what that means for every department, but also as it relates to what people in the community spent their time, and in some cases their money on, to make sure that they knew, that we knew what they wanted to see from us. That said, the other handout that you will have is a little kind of pamphlet that'll have some graphs and charts, and that is just some basic information about the money. What I learned when I served in the state legislature, what I know for sure, there are a lot of hardworking, smart, engaged people who have no idea how the process works, who have no idea about what our budget is, many don't know who represent them. What they expect is for elected officials or appointed officials to go to work every day, for us to do our jobs and make your life easy, so you don't have to come here at 6 o'clock at night to figure out how or whether or not you're going to vote for something so we can solve problems that you probably think we shouldn't have. In order for you to make an informed decision, to understand the situation you're in and why the needs are what we are stating they are, you need to know about the budget. You need to know about the debt. You need to know about our expenses, and you need to know about our revenue. And so with the information you have, you will see that our revenue is about $48,000, expenses about $46,000, our debt about, I don't have, oh yes I do. So our bond debt, which stems from projects and debt we entered into going back really earlier than 2016. A lot of this got refinanced, but that bond debt totals somewhere upwards of $18.7 million. And the debt that was entered into shortly before I was sworn in, and that was sort of the latter end of 2024, was what you see headed as Amendment 78 debt. That debt came from fire truck that was ordered years before it's necessary. It came from support for the hotel, the convention center hotel, a little over $3 million. And then the rest of it was for equipment, parks and street department equipment. All of that totaled an additional 7.3 plus $1 million, totaling our total debt to a little over $26 million. Okay? Now, when you look at the debt, and then you look at what we spend our city money on, it is not luxury items. Nobody's taking a bunch of free trips for a vacation on your dime. Where there has been some fraud, waste, and abuse that we discovered, we have identified it, we turned the information over to the authorities, and we have made changes so that we can ensure that we do better with the city's money. But if you look at expenses, you'll see that over half, a little over half of the money we spend on public safety. You'll see that the next area is quality of life. Okay? Then you've got administration, our bond debt service, and now that has increased also to the finance debt, miscellaneous and capital projects. When you look over to revenue, it's important to know where our money comes from, because a lot of people don't know where the city dollars actually come from. You'll see that a little less than half of city revenue comes from sales tax. And that's the case with most cities that have departments and have personnel. The next largest stream of funding comes from the licenses and fines and fees. Then we have money from the state of Arkansas, which comes in the form of grants and partnerships. Property taxes, so property taxes that we pay, a small portion of that actually goes to the city. And then you'll see franchise fees, which come from our bills when we pay utilities and for our phone service, miscellaneous other grants. Pretty small portion comes from the federal government, but that 2% is incredibly important as that helps us with housing and grants for other vulnerable populations. And you'll see that 11% of that comes from the casino. Now, a lot of people have asked me in the last year, where did all the money from the casino go? Well, the money from the casino as well as the medical marijuana, there's not that much money that comes from medical marijuana. It's such a small amount that in the revenue report that we get from DFA, the Department of Finance and Administration of the state, it's wrapped into another category. It is, in the grand scheme, not that much, certainly nowhere near what we get from the casino. We get about so far this year, we have collected $5,438,239.58. But many of you will probably be surprised to know that in 2019, the very first year that we received any funds for the casino revenue to the city, that amount was $119,000 plus. The next year, it was a little over $1 million. The following year was 3.6, and in 2022, then we got 4.1 plus. 2023, 4.8. 2024, 5.1. You see the steady decline since $4 million has been due to the app, the money that's generated from the app. And when the hotel opens, and we're excited about that, we won't get most of that money. Most of that money that's generated from the hotel will come from the hamburger tax. We will get a sales tax on the hotel. Now, the other thing that's important to know is our sales tax is, people see that 9-10%, 10% when we have the other tax, and think, number one, that we have one of the highest tax rates of all the cities. We do not. Right now, we make sure I get it right. As a matter of fact, if you look on your sheet for frequently asked questions, you are going to see on question 11, doesn't Conroe already have one of the highest sales tax in the state? No, we don't. Out of 357 municipalities in the state of Arkansas, we rank 205. So we hover in the higher end of the middle. And out of the 10 largest cities, we rank number 10. We're the 10th largest city in Arkansas. Out of the 10 largest cities, we rank number 3 with the lowest sales tax. And what you have to remember is no matter what, the state gets 6.5% off the top. Then the county's rate is 1.25, and our municipal rate is 1.625. No city can raise over 1 cent sales tax or increase. And the other thing that we need to be mindful of is that we can learn from is the penny for progress tax was a forever tax. So there was no sunshine. We still collect that tax, and we're still paying off bond debt for some of the projects associated with that tax. After we will complete paying off our bond debt somewhere around, 2046. That's if we don't pay some of it early. Okay, that's the $18 million portion. And then these other leases and the Amendment 78 portion, you'll see that those are 5-year loans, 5-year lease agreements that started in 2024. So in 2031, we will pay that debt off. And Pine Bluff has A1 credit. All of that debt, we have very good interest rates, but it's still a lot of debt. And it's a lot of debt where we have hovered around $2 million deficit. And it doesn't show on here because what we do is use our carryover to balance our budget. And the carryover has been, strong because we had so many positions open in the police department. But one of the things that I came into office clearly understanding is the people of Pine Bluff wanted a much stronger police presence. Many people had no idea of how few officers we had on the street at any given time. on any given shift, and it was one of my most important priorities to make sure that we recruited and hired as many officers as we could afford so that we could do a better job and they could be safer in doing their job to address crime in the city of Pine Bluff and to make sure that we are a presence and that we can show up. The men and women of the Pine Bluff Police Department have been doing the best they can with what they have. I believe the same is true for our Pine Bluff Fire Department, which also, I believe in the last year, we took steps to fully staff. But when we fully staff, don't think that it's just the salary. Particularly with Pine Bluff Public Safety, which is why we have over half of our budget goes to public safety. It's not just the salary, it's the fringe, right? The retirement, the health insurance, the taxes, but it's also equipment, vehicles. So all of those things are important to make sure that our personnel, leadership in both of those departments have what they need to be effective. A couple other points that I'm going to make just about the tax itself before I take some questions. I would like for you to please turn on the provide the Bluff, the green cursive writing at the top. Frequently asked questions covers a lot. The first two things we cover, though, is just highlighting our primary priorities, which I stated at the beginning of this talk, and then outlining the 8 categories. So we passed this, and I'm going to speak it into existence because I know for a fact everyone I talk to has said to me, "There, I know we need resources if we want change in Pine Bluff." Some people want to wait. We can't afford to wait. Because now that we are utilizing our funding for police and our budget to make sure that we are addressing from potholes to GBI, we've used our budget. We don't know what's going to happen with the pause or the dismantling of federal funding for some of the things that we rely on for some of our most vulnerable citizens. We don't know what can happen in terms of a natural disaster. Now, we do have about $8 million, $7 to $8 million in reserve, and that's significant, but it's not a lot. We need a cushion, and then the bottom line is, whatever you want as a resident, as a business owner, as an employee, you may live somewhere else, but you spend half of your life here in Pine Bluff if you don't live here. Whatever your interest is as a stakeholder, I also know for sure that you want the roads to be smooth, you want this place to be safe, you want our children to have the programming and the resources and the opportunities. I don't know how many of you have children here or grandchildren. I've heard a lot from people who are tired of their kids having to leave and go to Little Rock, Memphis, North Little Rock, Missouri, California, to be able to get a decent job. Or so they think, or to open a business. We want to get rid of the blight. And in getting rid of the blight, we want people to move back. We want people to move home. We want businesses to invest here. How do we expect for businesses to come in and invest in our downtown and invest in our commercial properties and place a business here if we aren't developing our own properties that we purchased? One of the things that I'm proposing with the city council, which was a great idea from one of my council members, is for right now, to dissolve urban renewal. There has not been any development of any of the properties that were purchased in about 2 years. And even then, I think what Urban Renewal did was build 2 houses. Just in terms of the commercial investment and the property investment, we are now creating our